Hi, my name is Jim Tiller, Vice President of Security for BT, and I'm here talking with Stephen Freed about his new book on mobile device security. So, Steve, why did you write this book?
Well, mobile security is a hot topic today, and it's something that a lot of organizations are really concerned about. And I took a look around at what was available to help folks guide them through the process of securing these devices and checking the approach they wanted to take for their risk. And there really wasn't a lot out there. So I said, well, here's a need in the market that we need to fill, and that's what started me on the journey.
Absolutely, there is not a lot out there. So when you think about mobile device security, what are you most concerned with? Are you most concerned with, say, malware, or is the book talk mostly about what it means to have a mobile device in corporate America, right, and the use and protection of data? Which one of those things really are predominant force in your book?
Well, malware is really just one of the risks that I identified. There's 6 fundamental risks, but the book is primarily about how to think about introducing mobile devices in your environment, understanding what the risks are, and not necessarily just saying, no, you can't use them, because that doesn't sit well with our users. So it's really about how to identify the risk, determine the path you want to take for securing the things that are most important to you. Are you worried strictly about data at rest? Are you worried about data in motion? Are you worried about loss or theft? Identifying what are you most concerned with, what are you trying to protect, and then give you ideas on the paths you take to go and protect that thing.
Now, so a lot of organizations are allowing employees, right, to use their mobile devices for work and so forth, and there's so many different kinds of devices. So what's your guidance to organizations that are looking at risk of mobile devices, and what's some of the advice that you give them on dealing with all these different types of platforms? Or do you think there's going to be changes in the future of how these platforms come together?
Well, that's very organization specific, and some organizations are taking a very lockdown approach, saying these are the devices we support and these are the things you can use. If you want to use a mobile device, you have a list of 5 or 10 or 12, and we'll support those, and anything else you can attach to our infrastructure. That's a very expensive proposition for an organization that has to buy all that technology and support it. Other organizations, for cost and operational reasons, are saying you go ahead and buy whatever IT you want. And if it has certain functionality, then you can attach it to the network, and that's what we'll support, but not necessarily dictating the devices that their users want, because users want a lot of personalization. They want the ability to load custom applications, and they want to be able to carry their data around without necessarily being interfered with by the organization. The risk there, of course, to the organization is there's a commingling of personal and corporate assets on the device, and then that's where the biggest risk is. Where do you draw that line? What's your policy? What's your approach to that? Do you allow that? Can you separate the two? Can you have access and protect the corporate data without necessarily interfering with the personal data, which given the current technology, is kind of difficult to do.
Now, what particular about your book, what would really stand out? What's one thing, if you had to say go to page X or whatever, what's the one where people can get, do you have any prescriptive things in the book that people can look to once they understand what you're conveying to them, that here are some actions that you can do to help you make these types of decisions? Is there things in the book that you want to help stand out for people to look for when they pick it off the shelf?
Sure. Well, it's not just on page X. Throughout the book, I try not to just explain what the problem is. I try to actually give some solutions to what you can do. Probably one of the most helpful pieces is, and I forget what specific page it's on, but there's a chart of the various controls you can implement in a mobile environment, and it's divided up by the different controls. And then within those categories, there are different categories of things you can do. So that particular section is sort of the summary of a lot of what's in the other parts of the book, bringing it together and showing how those controls interact and how you can use them in a defense in depth style to protect most of what you need to. I mean, you'll never be completely secure. We all know that. We've known that for years. But the idea is to have enough controls in place and have enough device security, enough data security, that you have a reasonable assurance that your data is protected wherever it goes.
Yeah, and especially when people hook their phones up to sync with their computers at home, or their, so those can get pretty interesting. So with that, what do you think mobile device security is going to look like in 5 years? What's your predictions? What's it going to be? Is security become more ingrained? What do you think it's going to look like in 5 years?
Well, I think the industry is going to mature, and because these devices started out in the consumer space, and they found their way into corporations and governments, and the security industry has lagged behind that, behind the functionality, as we generally tend to do. Now that there's enough concern and there's enough work being done to try to secure these devices, I think the next generation or two will start to have a lot of this functionality built in. We'll start to see robust encryption on the devices natively. We'll start to see good access controls on the device. We'll start to see communications links that you can secure built into the operating systems of the devices, as opposed to us having to add them on with third-party products.
Interesting. So as a final question, I think everybody's wondering, what phone do you use?
What phone do you use? Right now I actually have a very dumb LG phone. It's a texting phone. I've used Blackberries, I've used iPhones, I've used a bunch of different devices. You know, it all depends on my needs at the moment.
Okay, excellent. Well, listen, thanks very much. I appreciate this. And mobile device security is coming out. This is the pre-version. It's getting ready. And when will it hit the shelves? When will it be?
I believe it's the end of June. It's scheduled for release.
End of June. Excellent. So, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.